But instead of
Aywar. What happened?
our President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin
Aywar.
Netanyahu cooking up a surprise for the Houthis. United States Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, seems to think so, and following Tuesday evening's intercepted ballistic missile attack, he said maybe the B-2 should visit Yemen. And meanwhile,
Iran
alongside
unleashes new
talks for a
strategy
deal to
against
end the fighting, the
US-Israel
IDF
after
has engaged in intense activity in the Gaza Strip, announcing the deployment of forces and the mission
Yalla.
that still remain for the IDF in the Strip. To start with, less than
Happy
a month
Tuesday,
after it was
Manzar.
deployed out, Division
Thank you for
99
coming.
is now operating in the Gaza Strip again. All of this is being done in order to lay siege to Hamas fighters ahead of a possible ceasefire. And we'll take a look at the decisions taken this week in Israel's security cabinet.
Shubakla!
In related news, proof has emerged from Gaza that Hamas is shooting
Yeah.
dissidents and distributing false
Ano ba?
Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host, Yair Pinto, and together with Mati
Ano
Shoshani,
ba?
we bring you the whole truth about what is happening in Israel. So Division
Do you see my
98
new
has
light
launched a
in
new
here?
operation inside
It's fun.
Gaza City alongside Division 162. And before the troops went in, the Air Force
Coming.
The Air Force eliminated
Kumain na ako eh.
terrorists in the area to allow the ground advance. So far, about 100 terror targets have been struck, including
Ang ganda
from
ng
sea.
ilaw mo,
And
be.
amidst these kinetic strikes, the IDF now estimates that within about 1
Mm.
to 2 weeks, the goals
Pwedeng
of
pang
Operation
vlog.
Gideon's Chariots will be achieved. At the same time, figures in the security establishment are pressing the political echelon to make a decision about what comes next, to continue forward with full conquest of the Gaza Strip or withdraw in favor
Gaza,
of a
Gaza.
deal.
You know Gaza?
31 IDF soldiers killed in
Yeah.
action since the ceasefire ended.
I want to
The
go
IDF's
Gaza
fighting
now.
in the Gaza Strip once again reaches a crossroads where two aims intersect, returning the hostages and defeating Hamas. The general impression now is that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is first trying to reach a hostage deal. Contrary to the Chief of Staff's presentation and following Israel's efforts to reach a deal based on the Witkoff outline and Hamas's refusal to agree, a new Qatari proposal
Thank you
has
guys for
come to the
coming.
negotiating table under which
Mga ano,
the living hostages
yeah.
and the remains of 18 hostages who have died in captivity will be released in the initial stage.
Ano ba
Will this
nangyari sa
latest
Iran?
deal be the one that everyone can agree to? Let me know what you think in the comments. And TBN Israel senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will explain why Netanyahu is heading
Sino ba ano?
witnessing a chain of events
Bakit
abroad
siya na lang ang laging nandoon?
would have seemed inconceivable. And the sword is drawing close to
Oh
the
my
regime's
God.
neck. And even the Revolutionary Guards are beginning to understand that after the humiliating defeat in the recent war with Israel and the United States, what was will no longer be. However, they are still playing a double game on the nuclear issue. Meanwhile, the terrorist organization Hamas announced, we have convened...
We have? Middle East boils ahead. Ano to? Speech at BRICS.
Israel's act of aggression against Iran came as the result of absolute impunity. It is granted by the US and some other European states to commit every atrocity in our region. Distinguished delegates, the common values of peace and justice are at serious stake now. Each and every UN member has the responsibility to stand up against this grave injustice and condemn Israeli aggression firmly.
Hi, Skies Moon.
We are determined to document Israel's war crimes and crimes
Good
against
evening.
humanity it committed during its aggression against my country. Israel and the United States must be held accountable for their violations of international law, including human rights and humanitarian law. We will not stop our demand for justice and compensation. We should bear in mind that consequences of this war of aggression would not be limited to any single country. The whole region and beyond will suffer. But more than that, the whole UN-based
Hi,
international law
Bobby.
system is
Where are
undermined
you
and
watching right now,
sidelined
Bobby?
in favor of lawlessness and malicious unilateralism. The world, every state, every UN mechanism, and every multilateral arrangements and groupings have to be alarmed and have to act now to end impunity
What's your
and
lunch?
to hold the criminals
Taco?
accountable for their
Mashallah.
unending atrocities and grave violations of international law in our region.
Taco.
As a recognized voice of the global south, BRICS should
What
fulfill
time
its
now?
role as a
What time
staunch
now there
defender
in
of
US?
international law and multilateralism in support of the United Nations fundamental principles of sovereign equality of all nations, non-use of force, and peaceful settlement of disputes. I should hasten to thank fellow BRICS members that appreciated the high responsibility they shoulder with respect to international peace and security by condemning and deploring the flagrant acts of aggressions launched against my
Ah,
country by two nuclear
Yalla,
armed
sleep.
militaries since 13 June. Dear colleagues, as I stand here, my great people are mourning for the loved ones they lost as the result of Israel's unprovoked aggression that lasted for 12 long days with the support, collaboration, and eventual participation
Ano
of the
ang
United
binabasa
States.
nito?
I urge everyone to realize the depth and gravity of the lawless behavior displayed from 13 to 24 June against Iran, as well as the overly
time?
dangerous consequences resulting from the Israelis'
Ah,
continuing
12 p.m.
impunity for its brutal
12
occupation,
noon?
apartheid, genocide, and warmongering in our region. In early hours of Friday, 13 June, just 2 days before the scheduled sixth round of Iran-US talks on nuclear issue, Israel waged a series of brutal military and terrorist strikes against my country.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Residential areas and military bases were targeted. Off-duty commanders
What happened to
and
you,
soldiers,
Eric?
as well
Are
as a
you
number of
okay?
university teachers and scientists were assassinated in cold blood. Ordinary people, including many kids and women, were slaughtered. Our peaceful nuclear facilities, all under the strict IAEA monitoring, were
Thank
attacked.
you guys for
Our
coming.
public infrastructure, including a number of fuel production facilities, were exploded. The US's subsequent involvement in this aggression by targeting Iran's peaceful nuclear installations has left no doubt as to the full complicity of the American government in Israel's war of aggression against Iran.
What
Mr.
happened,
President,
Eric?
the Israeli regime's unlawful attack against Iran was an act of aggression
Yeah, I'm
not
happy.
only against our residential areas and nuclear facilities, but worse than that, it was a lethal blow to diplomacy and rule of law. What the Israeli regime and subsequently the United States committed were no less than an unprecedented breach of international peace. The fact that the developing non-nuclear weapon state has been attacked by two
Thank
nuclear-armed
you.
regimes with the support of at least two more nuclear-armed states that are also permanent members of United Nations Security Council is only appalling and
crazy.
extremely consequential. No rule of law or logic allows anyone to target the IAEA-monitored
And
peaceful
you.
nuclear facilities of another state
Thank you,
simply
Eric.
out of speculation that the facilities may sometimes be used for weaponization. Mr. President, my people stayed steadfast and resolved in defense of our homeland against these blatant acts of aggression, their criminal attacks following the heroic resistance of our strong armed forces. We will
Sure.
definitely continue
Thank
to
you for the
defend
heart.
with all force against any future aggressions. But this is not over. As long as the Israeli regime's lawless behavior is supported and justified by its backers and apologists,
What is
it is a shame
that?
that the international
Eric?
community has been unable to do anything meaningful to end
I'm not
the
angry to
genocide of
anyone.
Palestinians for the past 2 years and stop Israel from occupying Arab lands in its vicinity.
Kamini, where? Ah. Oh. Oh, coming in. Legacy.
Hello and welcome everyone on this official platform.
Oh no! Iron Dome.
A lot of people are talking about the Iron Dome failing. Israeli most recent
You know
military
Iron Dome?
is failing.
Iron
Iran
Dome.
is capable of penetrating and hitting some targets in Israel. Is the Iron Dome
No.
really failing? And what is the Iron Dome? We're gonna find out about this.
Eric, where are
So
you
we're
now?
here in Israel. That's where everything is happening. People are talking about the Iron Dome. And a lot of people are saying the Iron Dome is not as strong as we thought it was. Is this true or not? We're gonna dive
You know
into this
Iron
very
Dome?
quickly and
Iron
explain
Dome?
more about this mystery. So what is the Iron Dome? The Iron Dome is a mobile air defense system developed by Israel to intercept and destroy short-range missile, artillery, shell, and drone before they hit popular area. It is indeed one of the most widely
No.
tested missile defense in the world.
I'm
It is known
fine.
for protecting Israel's cities from attacks by groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. Now, what is failing is not the Iron Dome, because the Iron Dome is part of a multi-layered defense
You know Iron
system.
Dome?
Israel's got multiple layers of defense, and the Iron Dome is one of the layers. It's not all of it. We'll explain. So what is the entire system?
Inside
It's
your
called the
house.
Israel
Where,
Multi-Layered
Eric?
Air and Missile Defense System. This integrated shield is designed to detect, track, intercept, and destroy incoming threats at different altitude and range, using several specialized systems working together.
Where?
So basically, it's not one system. It's layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. Now, each of them is supposed to attack specific missile, specific threat. So the system basically identifies what threat is coming toward the country and launches the appropriate defense mechanism. If that defense mechanism doesn't destroy the target, then the next
The
mechanism
target.
will try to do the same. Are we together? So here's some of the layers of the
Ah.
system that everybody calls the Iron Dome. Layer 1 is what you call the Iron Dome.
Layer.
Short-range rockets, mortars, and drones.
Ano ba yung mga
So the
Iron
Devil
Dome na
Sling
yan?
targets medium-range missiles and cruise missiles. Target ballistic missile within the atmosphere.
Oh.
These are missiles that come out of the atmosphere and back into the earth. Those are the missiles that
Where
Area
is
3 actually
Dawn?
attacks.
I
This is
miss
against
Dawn.
intercontinental ballistic missiles, like missiles that come from China or the
So Trump, at the end of the day, does not care about having allegiance to the promises to his base. He's a con man at the end of the day, and he will do whatever is best for his businesses. If we don't rise up
July
and stop
4.
Israel from committing
I'm
this
here
horrific
in the
genocide in
UAE.
plain day,
Okay?
what is next? You cannot keep people deprived of basic human rights and liberty. You can't keep people caged like animals. You can't starve babies. So growing up as an American, Israel was always kind of an extension of my country. It was always seen as, essentially the 51st state. They kind of used Trump as a Trojan horse to try to reinvigorate the neocon plan, the long-standing dream of regime change in Iran.
My name is Charulata Biswas, and today I'm being joined by Abby Martin, who is an independent journalist, filmmaker, and creator of The Empire Files. Her film Gaza Fights for Freedom offers a raw, deeply reported account of the siege of Gaza, something rarely seen in US media. Today, as the dust settles
What
on the
fox,
ceasefire between
Eric?
Israel and Iran, we ask, is peace even possible when the world's
What's
biggest
the
superpower,
fox?
the United States of America, keeps arming both sides? And what's really going on behind the rhetoric of peace, security, and freedom? So, Abby, thank you so much for being here. I know you have been covering a lot and you are in between your news reports and interviews, so I deeply appreciate you making time for us.
Thank you.
All right, so let me begin with my first question. Israel attacked Iran's nuclear sites on June 13th, and now, after 2 weeks, there's a ceasefire in place between Israel and Iran. And this came after the US intervened. But right now, it feels like a pause. What's your sense? Will this ceasefire hold, or are we on a short fuse?
We're living in tumultuous times, and the Middle East is a tinderbox right now at the doing of a genocidal rogue rogue state that
It's
has
a
nuclear
genocide,
weapons.
you know.
It's a proxy of the U.S. empire, again, a nuclear-armed rogue state that is, of course, facilitating and subsidizing this horrific genocidal onslaught. I think this is a pause, a cessation of course, unrelenting massacres for the last year and a half. So I think that what we're going to see, Israel already has been assassinating top nuclear scientists within Iran for years.
Hi,
with
Dark
complete impunity.
Angel.
They're bombing these people alongside their entire families. I can't even fathom the outrage if this were Israeli scientists
What
that were
you
being
mean?
assassinated alongside their entire families. So I do think that this is a pause, and I do not think it's the end. I think that there's a lot of arrogance and belligerence when it comes to Israel and the U.S., and they're not going to stop.
Thank you,
They don't
Eric.
know how to stop, and they are completely shrouded with impunity.
What you
and
mean,
no one
Dark
is stopping them.
Angel?
Abby, do you sense that this was all an attempt to change the regime in Iran? What's your assessment?
Well, I think that
Where are
I
you
think that
watching
Trump
right now, Dark
and a lot of the
Angel?
neocons, I mean, Trump's an empty vessel for his Wall Street backers, Miriam Eldison, all the people who are really paid for his presidency. He's an empty vessel. He doesn't really have an ideological root, but I do think he is
Ay,
beholden,
nako.
obviously, to his donors and backers, and he is close friends with Netanyahu. We know that neocons have served a very important role. They kind of used Trump as a Trojan horse to try to reinvigorate the neocon plan, the long-standing dream of
Why are you
regime
just
change in Iran.
laughing, Eric?
So Israel seized the political capital of October 7th to go full genocidal and try to expand their Greater Israel project. The U.S. seized that political capital to then engage in their greater project, which is obviously complete hegemony in the Middle East and subservience from any, state that is not completely allied with U.S. imperialism. So the U.S. kind of catapulted this. I think that they just went along with it. We know from the former NATO commander, General Wesley Clark, that this is a long-standing plan back from the Bush administration. 7 countries in 5 years. Clearly, they weren't able to do that, but we fast forward 20 years and we see the plans are still clearly laid out. Trump dismantling the nuclear deal when he came into office the first time. Clearly, they didn't want diplomacy or negotiations. They want complete and total annihilation of any state that is not totally dominated by the U.S. policy.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I understand. And contradictory to what he promised, Trump's big pitch was to end forever wars, and now he wants the
UAE.
Nobel Peace Prize so desperately, right? So wouldn't supporting another war get in the way of that image?
Well, Trump is a con man above all, and he speaks out of all sides of his mouth. And so even in the ramp up to his first presidency, he was able to kind of go to the left of Hillary Clinton when it came to her neocon foreign policy. He was saying no more wars. She's the neocon belligerent warmonger. And you saw him kind of catalyze and try to crystallize those talking points in the second round, even though he expanded drone strikes, increased them 400%, tried to, he assassinated Soleimani. It was a miracle that we didn't go to war with Iran the first time. He tried to do a coup in Venezuela. All of these things were horrific and laid bare that Trump was expanding the empire, went against all of his promises of an isolationist, America first, non-interventionist. So I wasn't fooled, but I think it's amazing how quickly the mask fell. I think that, above all, he doesn't have to do anything to MAGA. I mean, his base elected him, and now he can just totally abandon all promises that he had to this kind of cult-like fan base because he just doesn't care. He's a con man at the end of the day, and he will do whatever is best for his businesses.
You've had considerable experience in reporting on Gaza. What do you feel is a solution, or at least a starting point?
I think it's very clear after over 75 years of horrific oppression, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and of course decades of horrific military occupation, brutal medieval siege on the people of Gaza and the West Bank. I think it is very clear that the only solution is one democratic state with equal rights for all, an immediate lifting of this horrific, barbaric practice of keeping people subservient into second-class citizens. I mean, it's absolutely insane. It's a tinderbox. You cannot keep people deprived of basic human rights and liberty. You can't keep people caged like animals. You can't starve babies. This is a genocidal policy. They want to kill infants. They are preventing baby formula from getting in there. Baby formula is the only thing that babies can drink. That is genocidal. That is genocidal. We need to stop. I mean, it is absolutely barbaric that we're in the year 2025. We are watching this in 4K on our phones. The audacity, the belligerence, the arrogance of countries to think that this is acceptable, this is the new precedent that we're setting for the globe. If we don't rise up and stop Israel from committing this horrific genocide in plain day, what is next? What message is that telling the other countries of the world that they can do lawlessly? Does law mean nothing? Does human rights mean nothing? This is a moment that is a testament to the human race. If we do not band together and do everything that we can, like Jeremy Scales said, what will be next will be even worse. And I don't want to live in a world like that, and I don't think any of us do. And so we have to motivate each other to stop this atrocity, because it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And every day people die needlessly. And every victim of this genocide is a whole world lost. And I don't want that on my shoulders. I don't want the blood on my hands anymore as an American citizen. It's my government subsidizing this, and I cannot sit idly by and watch this for one more day without shouting from the rooftops, stop it! Stop! The only solution is a complete and total end to this horrific policy, sanctions on Israel, accountability for all of
This
the
guy
war
is smooth.
criminals, mass re-education of the horrific genocidal mentality and mania that has taken over Israeli society,
What
and a
happened
full
to them?
democratization of the state, integration of the Palestinians as equals,
Oh, I'm back.
shelling into crowds
I
of
just
civilians,
removed the-
starving people coming to just get morsels of food, and tanks are shelling them, murdering dozens of people at once. I just cannot fathom. I cannot fathom the fact that we have let it get this far, and that this kind of death and atrocities are normalized every single day. I can't fathom the fact that starvation is a necessary weapon of war to the so-called civilized world. This is barbaric and savage, and I can't
I
stand
just
behind it,
removed
and I am
the-
shocked and disgusted at the rest of the
I
world,
just
the leaders that are just
blocked
sitting
the
there with just
people
only rhetoric and no actions. Israel
there.
should be completely isolated for its horrific acts against humanity, and instead they're coddled and protected.
You know, there is a popular saying that no matter whoever becomes the US president, whether it is Democrat or Republican, the full-fledged support for Israel is always there. So why do you think it's there? And why is the US always there to protect Israeli interests?
Well, the U.S., growing up in the U.S., Israel was always seen as an extension of the United States. Zionism was not really seen as a separate ideology. It was simply an extension of American exceptionalism. So growing up as an American, Israel was always kind of an extension of my country. It was always seen as, essentially the 51st state. I mean, the only democracy in the Middle East. We had to protect it, right? It was part of us. And so, not even knowing what Palestine was, not even knowing what Gaza was, the complete indoctrination of not just the distortion and mistruths about Palestine, Israel, but just the entire apparatus of global affairs, foreign policy. I mean, all we are is lied to. The entire media acts as an arm of the state, and it activates as a propaganda
this?
apparatus whenever this consent is needed to be manufactured.
Janaya,
So when you see a
I
people from
blocked
last
the
year saying
people
more Americans didn't,
who
half Americans
message
don't know
bad.
more Israelis died than Palestinians, that shows you that there's vast, deep-seated ignorance
They
in even what is
messaging
going on and the
nonsense,
consequences of these policies around the
Who is
world and how
this?
they're even linked to our government. But every U.S. president,
Maybe I block all.
every presidential administration has
This
staunch
one
allegiance
who message nonsense.
to Israel because that's
Then
just
you
the name of the
cannot
game.
see
That's the
them
way the
there.
institutions are set
Who's
up. You
this
don't get in these
Janaya?
positions of power unless you're a Zionist,
Maybe they
unless you're
don't
a
like
true
what
believer
I'm
in
watching.
imperialism. So it's adjacent to U.S. exceptionalism, to U.S. imperialism. And of course, the lobby, to the extent that
I don't like what
has
I'm
subsidized
watching.
and emboldened the lobby, it's kind of become a runaway train where now you see lobby representatives undermining actual constitutional rights of American citizens, lobbying to state legislatures to pass
Who
anti-BDS
is
laws
this?
and things like
Who are
that and
you?
undermine our free speech. So it is confusing to people to think, how did this lobby get such undue
I'm
influence?
watching
But it all
and
does come
listening
back
to this
to the
news.
fact that it is
That's
empowered
why the people
by the
don't
largest,
like
most
what
violent
I'm
military
watching.
apparatus the world has
So
ever
they
seen.
talk bad
And when
and
Israel is a
nonsense.
proxy to
So I
that,
block
a
them
rogue
all.
nuclear armed state, an empire that's holding the world hostage with nuclear weapons, no one can bat an eye to that. No one can stand up to that because everyone's terrified of the implications of standing up to what Iran calls the Great Satan.
Abby, you have called the US a glorified arm dealer, and this year's defense budget really seems to prove your point. It is the highest in American history. Both Trump and Biden talked about cutting spendings. So who's really benefiting from it?
Well, the president is really the arms dealer in chief. That is what the job is. I mean, you look at all arms
Who
sales
is
around the
this?
world, the United States empire provides nearly 50% of all weapons. It is the largest force of instability and violence in the world today, and that is without a doubt. We have the 5 premier defense contractor companies here in the U.S., Boeing,
Are
Lockheed
you
Martin,
okay?
Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics. And all of those
You
companies are pariahs. I
are
mean, no one should be
threatening
working for these engines of death and destruction.
other people?
The lobbyists for the defense contractors sometimes outweigh even the congressional representatives.
Really?
I mean, it's absolutely cartoonish when you see the actual
What will you
way
expose?
that the institution is built to just
Did
benefit
I did
defense
something
contractors.
wrong?
War is a business, and business has never been better. And it doesn't matter what the outcome of the wars are, as long as the money keeps flowing and the weapons keep flowing. These
What's
contractors
wrong?
will make out with billions of dollars. Doesn't matter the millions of people that
Ignorance.
are thrown in the meat grinder in Ukraine. No,
So
they are
that's
making
what you will
record,
expose.
earth-shattering profits year after year. And Gaza, I mean, you see the internal phone calls and stuff with these board of directors. They're probably just salivating over
You
the profits
threaten
that are
all the people.
skyrocketing through this genocide. So it is
That's
absolutely
a threat
insane. It is all
already.
to benefit U.S. capital, and then you have the U.S. military basically as the muscle to protect the business.
You know, that's
So
a
it's
threat.
enforced around the world to just protect global capital, and the defense contractors they enforce all of the policies.
You know,
And you have this
that's a threat.
revolving door with the military-industrial complex going right back into the defense industry and then right back in the military-industrial complex. And it's just unbelievable how transparent it is.
So, Abby, while we talk about war abroad, there's another war
Why you
brewing
need
at home, and
to
I'm talking
talk
about the
bad?
immigration crackdown. Trump's
See,
deportation campaign is back,
your
and billions
message
are
is
being funneled
blocking
into that
because you
so-called
may
big, beautiful wall.
you
What do you expect to see on the ground in the coming months?
you have tell maybe
You know, Trump
bad
announced
words again.
that he
That's
wanted
why
a
it's
$1 trillion
blocking.
defense budget. This is astronomical. If you actually look at the true
Why you need
cost of our
to
defense
threat
spending, quote unquote
others?
defense spending is really war. It's 1.5 trillion already when you count in
Hello,
veterans benefits. So
Rex.
this is how much the United States is already spending in totality year after
Bakit
year
kayong mga
on war,
taga-US?
and just making war a business. And like
Napaka-nonsense
Martin
nila
Luther
kung
King
ayaw
Jr.
nila yung
said, when a
pinapanood
nation
ko.
is spending that much on an engine of war, at home there's spiritual death. So you see this hollowed out of all the social programs. 60% of Americans
So
have no
bakit
money
kaya
even
niya
for savings
pinapanood
or
kung
for
ayaw niya?
emergency. People are at the edge. And so what you're seeing is with this horrific draconian overreach, this fascist, Gestapo in the streets, ripping people out of their homes, kidnapping people, ripping mothers away from their screaming children in the streets. Even people who maybe thought that they wanted to deport illegals or whatever the mantra is that Trump ran on, with obviously the Democrats agree to a
What
certain
is that
extent. I
ignorance
think when
on
you see this
topics and
nightmarish
claims?
dystopian reality playing out, people are shocked and horrified. They don't want to live in a country where it doesn't matter if your crime is stepping over an invisible line because maybe your country was bombed or sanctioned by the U.S. and you have no economic
Oh,
viability. What's the bigger crime? Ripping a mother away from her child and throwing her in a detention facility, or deporting her from the country away from her
not
children?
all
That's a
Filipinos
horrific
think
crime
like
against
you.
humanity. So I think that people really need to take a step back and look in the mirror.
Really?
What kind of person do you want to be? What are you supporting? What kind of policies are you supporting? So I do see this as a
So I
burgeoning
thought
mass
you are a
consciousness. All
nice
these people are linking
person,
these struggles together, and
but
Trump's
it's not.
policies are having an enormous backlash because people, at the end of the day, do not want to live in a country where fascism has taken over. People want to live in a country where their fellow human
Because
beings are
that's
treated
what
with
I
dignity
want.
and
So what
respect.
will I do?
And that is not what we're seeing now. And I
I
think we're going
listen
to see
to
a
other
mass
people or I
uprising
listen to
against
myself,
Trumpism. And
right?
we're already seeing that.
And do you see a glimmer of hope when we see someone like
How
Mamdani who
people
won the
have,
nomination in
you
New
know,
York? Do you think that
they
that
have
sort of
the freedom
is
to
like a
choose
reflection
what
of what
they
you
want.
see?
I think the Mamdani win in New York is a huge moment. It's the most Jewish country. Sorry, New York City is the most Jewish city in our country.
Be, may baliw na
And they
nanonood
just
sa akin ba?
elected for the primary candidate, a man who basically is
Sa
saying
live
exactly what
ko
I'm
sa
saying.
YouTube.
That no, an
Blinak ko na siya,
apartheid,
pero may
military
iba na
occupation
naman
state
siyang
that has
account.
Jewish supremacy. No, it
Nasa
shouldn't
California
exist.
siya,
A state with
andito.
equal rights for all. I mean, the fact that a
Parang
mayoral race is
baliw.
exposing just this absurd obsession with Israel. Why should the mayor of New York even be commenting on a foreign country?
Ano
So I
namang
think it's
problema nito?
exposed
Ba't
a
hindi
lot
na
to
lang
not
kaya siya
only
matulog?
New Yorkers, but I think Americans in general who are thinking, wait a minute, what's going on? But I think above all, it's dealt a huge blow
If that's
to
what
Israel in general and all of its supporters,
the
because it
person
is finally
wants to
saying
become,
your propaganda
then
does not work.
what is your
AIPAC does not
problem,
scare
right?
us. Because at the end of the day, people are not hoodwinked by this absurd, baseless propaganda anymore, this upside down reality, this gaslighting that you're telling us. No, people see the truth with their own eyes. You can no longer tell us that it's anti-Semitic to care about Palestinian lives. So this is the fatal blow to the propaganda machine. Hasbara is no longer working. Even in the
Oh,
most Jewish
really?
state in the country, we see polling
Maybe
among
that's
young
personal, I
Jews. They
think.
no
More
longer
personal.
sympathize or even identify with Israel. The conflation with
I
a
don't
peaceful
know why.
religion with a genocidal death cult is no longer applicable. And so we're seeing a complete tidal change in the sentiment and the consciousness, and now Israel and its defenders are going to be on defense for the rest of time until they advocate for the fall of apartheid.
Have you ever been censored or shadow banned or blocked from speaking at universities, or do you think there is any room left in US media for pro-Palestine or space right now?
May
I think that we've
problema
seen
to
with the Silicon
siguro.
Valley working in concert with the political establishment, unabashed, Zionist, unapologetically imperialist, capitalist. I think it is up to us to elevate Palestinian journalists left. Palestinian voices, we need to continue to uplift those voices and try to showcase what they are telling us and what they've been trying to tell us for the last 75 years. Because thanks to social media so far, we have learned the truth. We have gotten the truth dictated to us from the bottom up, from the grassroots, from the voices that were attempted to be marginalized and erased. And so I
Hello,
do see hope. I
Cardet.
see eternal optimism with the fact that we can get a pipeline directly from Palestinians without the filter of the New York Times or these so-called egregious
You
papers
have
of
your
record
own
that are essentially
problem.
propaganda rags
You.
for war profiteers. I'm extremely optimistic with where we are going
That's
with
your
this mass
personal
consciousness
problem,
and this
maybe.
kind of solidarity that I'm seeing included worldwide with my brothers and sisters with an international lens of how to approach global struggles with a global solution. So I'm very optimistic that we will see
It's
not only
not
an
my
end to this genocide,
problem.
but an end to Israeli apartheid within this generation.
All right, Abby, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation and sharing your insights.
Ay,
And
naku.
thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much.
So why are you threatening other people? Because of your problem. Why are you like that? And you hate others' religion? Oh no,
All right.
that's not good.
Neil, we've been in the US and we've been talking to farmers and manufacturers and truck drivers and business owners. And one of the themes that keeps coming up is the chaotic nature of Donald Trump's policies and how they've been rolled out. I wonder how you would describe and summarize President Trump's trade and tariff policies in his second term so far.
This is the second Trump term.
I thought you're really
And in the
good
first Trump
person,
term,
but
we had
I'm
tariff
wrong.
chaos. And Donald Trump has
I
been
was
talking
wrong.
about tariffs ever since he went into American political life. What's different is that he used different methods this time around. And by using a new legal instrument, he was able to impose tariffs much faster than most people expected. So on April 2nd, and he'd already by that time imposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, as well as on China.
How can you say you are good?
On April 2nd, he unveiled tariffs on everybody, even on uninhabited islands, at rates that seemed completely fantastic. And ever since April 2nd, policy has been changing on an almost weekly basis. On April 9th, we got a 90-day postponement of the reciprocal tariffs. We then had a radical de-escalation of the trade war with China.
Because you're talking
Tariffs
nonsense. You
on
threaten
Europe have been
people.
up and then down. The grand old Duke of York, who had 10,000 men and marched them up to the top of the hill and marched them down again,
That's
has got
good.
nothing on President Trump, whose
I
trade
tell
policy
you.
is now changing almost on a daily basis.
You're
That's what's
against
different. We knew
to...
he was a protectionist.
For
He
what?
said he was going to do tariffs. He even specified reciprocal tariffs in the campaign. But nobody expected
Not good.
whiplash like this.
Is another element of it the different advisors and cabinet members this time round, the people around him who support these ideas?
That's right. President Trump does
Instead,
not
I
have
will listen to the news,
a
but you
normal
are there.
presidential relationship
You're
to
talking not good.
advisors and to members of his cabinet. Most presidents use the chief of staff as gatekeeper, and the chief of staff's job is to make sure that there's some kind of rhyme and reason to who gets into the Oval Office. That is not Trump's style, and Susie Wiles, as chief of staff,
Really
hasn't
not
been able
good.
to control the traffic. As a result, there are days when Peter Navarro, who is a radical protectionist, perhaps
If you have
only
nothing
economist in
good
the
to
world
tell
who
me,
agrees with
better
Trump's idea of reciprocal
don't
tariffs,
message.
gets into the Oval Office and has the president's ear. When the reciprocal tariffs were postponed, it was because Navarro had in effect been locked in a broom cupboard, and the Treasury Secretary Scott
So the
Bessent
people
and
I
the Commerce
think
Secretary
who was
Howard Lutnick
good
got into the Oval
will
Office,
be
called
the
Trump
one
and
who
said,
will...
"You got to do something. You got to postpone these tariffs because we're
who
about to
is
blow up the global financial
very
markets."
bad
So it is
person.
chaotic,
I'm
not only in
thinking
terms of intention and declaration,
Hi
but also
Santosh
in
and
terms of just
Mason.
access to the president.
Could you explain to our audience
I
what
thought
exactly
you're really
Donald
good,
Trump is
but
trying to
I
achieve
was
with these
wrong,
tariffs and
really.
whether you think he will succeed in doing so?
It's far from easy, but there are three rationales for imposing tariffs, duties on imports into the United States at much higher rates than we have seen in our lifetimes. However things turn out, even if it's just 10% all round, that's going to be a higher effective tariff rate than the United States has seen since World War II. So that's the first thing to remember. What's the point of it? Well, part of the point is revenue. Conceivably, hundreds
You
of
have a
billions,
personal
some
problem.
even say trillions of dollars are
This
involved,
is
though I
not
think it's
good.
closer to hundreds of billions. So it's a source of revenue, which, if you're running a deficit of 6% of GDP, is a non-trivial consideration. Second reason,
Instead you
well,
focus
you
on
want to
your
engage in
own, but
negotiations
you
with
are
your trading
making
partners. And the US
people
is the
bad.
biggest economy in the world, and it isn't that reliant on trade compared
Yeah,
to
this
some. So this is a way of
someone
exerting leverage and doing
I
what Trump
thought
loves best,
who was
which is
good
to play the bully in
is
negotiations, be part of the deal. Third
commenting
reason,
me not good.
you want to reindustrialize America because manufacturing jobs from really the beginning of this century started to go overseas in a really and you encourage investment in manufacturing in the United
That's what's
States.
happening.
So it can't be all three of those things at once when you think about it, because if it's just a negotiating tool, it's not a regular source of revenue. But Trump uses all three arguments
I'm
to
not
justify what he's
insecure.
doing.
You're just...
I wanted to come to the trade war between China and the US. You've likened it
You
to a
have your
game of
own
chicken.
problem and you
Tell us more
comment
about
bad.
that and who you think blinked
You
first.
comment bad in
China
your
is
first
really
account. That's
central
why I
to
blocked
all of
you, you
this.
know.
Donald
Now
Trump was able to
you
launch his
do
political
again
career
another
when he
account
announced
and
a
you're
bid for the
talking again
presidency in
nonsense.
2015, because he was practically the
To me.
only politician.
Before,
The rise of China was a problem.
I'm
and
not
the United
insecure.
States
You